Hello, welcome to Framework. I am Al Schwartz. With me, as always, John Bernard.
Hi, it's me, John. Hello.
Hi, we're doing a TV roundup thing here, just to go do a quick run through of everything that we've been keeping up with on TV, but not talking about on here. So, John, what have you been watching lately?
Well, I've actually been watching a lot of television this summer. Let's see. Where to start? Well, I watched Stranger Things. I know you did not watch Stranger Things this year.
I did not.
It was good. It was a good season. Everyone kind of agreed with me on that one. This was a solid season of Stranger Things. Every episode was an hour and a half long. Some were 2.5 hours. It was nuts, but
That was the thing.
yeah.
I pulled up the menu and saw these like 82-minute run times, and I was just like, you know what? I don't have to do this.
Yes.
Just don't have to do this. Full stop. And eventually I probably will, but it was very freeing to make the decision that, you know what, I don't need to try and spend 3 nights in a row trying to get through the premiere of this season.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that. The inconvenient truth about that, though, is this is the best Stranger Things has ever been, and it's
Wow.
good. You don't have to remember the other stuff. This kind of like, this is basically what we're about, and here you go, and we're just sort of rephrasing all the main things about this show and creating an end game. Like it moves into its final position here. There's one season to go, and it seems clear they're writing towards an ending now, which is useful for them. It's good.
Certainly.
Yeah.
It's a mythology heavy show, so
Mhm.
it definitely helps. Yeah, that's the thing that TV always struggles with, is that the traditional model of TV is very open-ended, and it's the old Simpsons joke of who knows what adventures they'll get up between now and when the show becomes unprofitable. And then,
Yes.
as you know, geekier, more mythology laden serialized storytelling has taken over TV, like that has always sort of fought against that idea that the mythology stuff requires a bit more of a roadmap laid out and an endpoint to be really satisfying.
Yeah, and I think that I don't know. I mean, we've seen many genre shows just kind of deal with this. Lost, of course, is the sort of the infamous example
For sure.
of mythology just becoming top heavy and difficult to and unsatisfying just inherently. There's no possible way to make Lost really work in the end. I think that's sort of where I landed with that. Like there was nothing that was going to work here and solve this show. And
It's a whole can of worms that I'm
right.
just not even going to pick up if we're trying to stay focused in the summer of 2022.
Right, but Stranger Things is like, limiting itself to well, I mean, it's weird to say it's limiting itself with the episode lengths. It's just going. It's just doing whatever. It's playing like it has, big dick Netflix money and can do whatever it wants, and that is how it's comporting itself. But they're doing a good job. That's the truth. Like, and this is sort of antithetical to a lot of the ways that we talk about these things. The bloat and the just the unnecessary size of it all. They do a good job with it. There's no other way to put it. I liked almost everything they did, and I think what I've keyed in on with this show, it reminds me. It's going to sound odd. It reminds me of Tarantino a little, in that. Well, we talk about when we talked about Tarantino at length, the amount of sampling that he has done, and how he has kind of taken this stuff, and it is not. It doesn't feel. It's dismissive to call it just copycatting or ripping off, because he's finding ways to bring back pieces from this Shaw Brothers karate movie or whatever, and sort of recontextualize this shot or this piece of music and place it in a modern context where it has different meaning, but it still kind of summons the emotional core that it had back in 1977 or wherever he took it from. Stranger Things is kind of doing that, I think, with 80s Amblin entertainment, 80s movies in general. There's stuff in this new season that is just like spy movie hijinks that reminded me of like a John Candy movie. Like that's sort of a reference point that I wouldn't have thought of for that show that seems so keyed in on doing E.T. and Gremlin stuff. But it's kind of like 80s cinema in general just thrown into a blender, and it's done pretty well. Like as well as anyone knows how to do this, it seems like it. It obviously doesn't feel like Tarantino, but it's a similar
Right.
style, I think.
I feel like Tarantino always brings that stuff to him, and it ends up with more of a Tarantino flavor than a Shaw Brothers flavor once it's passed through there. Whereas Stranger Things in the seasons that I've seen feels like it channels the original stuff a little more directly.
A bit more. But,
more of a cover than a remix, if that makes sense.
well, I mean, compare it to the J.J. Abrams one. What was it? The
Super
I want to call it 8mm. That's not it. Yeah. Super
not
8
exactly.
That's a movie that is clearly just like, okay, this is like an 80s Amblin movie. You know, this is what you remember. And the Stranger Things, in contrast, feels like it has much more of its own identity, much more of its own story, you know, clearly taken from a specific time and place of filmmaking. But I don't know. It feels
Sure.
less slavish to me.
And it's been built up over time because now it's
Yeah.
had several years of doing its own thing. So even if it's just, you know, jumping from reference to reference by now, it has sort of built up its own identity, I think. My hope, I guess, for that is that as, you know, as those kids get older and we're getting in.
Oh, yeah, they're like 28 now. They're way
right.
Yeah.
Well, and for the end game too, like, all right, maybe we can transition a little out of the Amblin vibe and maybe a little more Carpenter for the final stretch. But
oh well,
I don't know if they've done
the
that.
big thing in this is Elm Street. Like the season 4 is an Elm Street riff. It is explicitly doing Nightmare on Elm Street stuff and 80s slasher, dead teenager movies, and that is cool. Robert Englund is in it. In case you missed it, you know, he's there doing a Freddy type character, kind of, and the main dream slasher monster guy that follows him is very, very Krueger until he's not, and he kind of becomes its own thing. It's good. I recommend you get around to it at some point. Obviously, the cultural moment has passed, and it'll probably be another, I don't know, 18 months before they put out the final season, so you've got time.
I thought they put them both out this summer.
It was part 1 and part 2 of season 4.
Oh, and there's going to be season 5.
Yes, there is a finale season coming. There's more.
Oh, okay. I thought it was all over.
Nope, not all done. It ends on an enormous cliffhanger, in fact. Yeah.
All right. Maybe I'll get around to it eventually. But I got kind of a full plate, you know.
Yeah, you can not watch it too. That's fine. We're at a point where there's enough you can just like, you know what? I don't think that I have time for all of this. Let's see. So I don't know. That's early summer stuff. I'm around the same time as Obi-Wan Kenobi. We never really
never talked about that, did we?
No. Whatever. I certainly don't have a strong opinion of it now.
No, it's crap.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess we could tie that together with She-Hulk maybe, because we're not doing an episode on that.
No.
But it's, you know, the Disney Plus is really, it's starting to wear me down. I mean, if I didn't have this 12-year-old kid in the house with me, I think I might have not bothered with Obi-Wan at all, because it never sounded like a good idea to me. And I gotta, at some point, I have to cut some of these streaming shows out of my life. There's just too many of them. It's too much.
Yeah, there are. There's too much for anyone, really. Like we're looking at HBO Max kill itself right now, and I'm just looking at the shows going away, and I'm just like, well, I mean, first off, most of these I've never even heard of, but I'm sure they're very important to somebody.
It just seems weird. Why would they need to go away? Like, I understand not making more of them, but taking them off the service provide some sort of tax break or something.
It means they don't have to pay residuals to the people who did the voice on Uncle Grandpa or whatever, you know, like the little cartoon shows that, you know, you may see in passing or whatever, you know, like they ditch all of those, and then they don't have to pay residuals to the artists, to the voiceover actors, to anybody, and they have made the calculation that they are in no way drawing subscriptions. No one will drop HBO Max because these shows are gone. So it's kind of, in a sense, penny pinching. It is short-term gains. It seems like a really, really bad idea long run, but I'm sure that the significant people up top will make a significant return this fiscal quarter, particularly.
Probably.
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't seem good.
No. Yeah. But I'm watching some stuff on HBO still, including like
one of the best ones.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So like currently, my wife and I have been watching Industry. Have you checked that out at all?
No, and I actually don't know what it is at all. Like I have no idea what Industry is.
So I think the big knock against Industry is that So it is about financial traders in London. It is created by a couple of former financial traders from London that were at
Okay.
this, like, what Morgan Stanley or whatever the hell, and they have the fictionalized version for the show. Uh, and these are not like really nice people. It's I think that the problem with it is it's a little too close to Succession in my head. Is that Succession is another sort of uber wealthy, vaguely British show about kind of
That's a good way to describe
dickheads and high finance. Industry is has much younger vibes, as it focuses on like people who are starting out in their first year out of college, basically in this high pressure environment. And honestly, like, it's got an incredible cast led by Ken Lung. And,
he's good.
Yeah. And some people I didn't know from before, but Myha'la Herrold and Marisa Abela are both really good as like the two main young women. And it's a strange show in that it's not super heavily British, but the accents can be a little tough to parse sometimes. And on top of that, you have all of the like shop talk where it's a lot of technical jargon in their like trading lingo that they don't walk you through. And generally, I can sort of follow at least the contours of, okay, who's winning this trade and who's losing this at any given moment based on just, general cinematography cues and people's reactions. So it's, and yet it's still kind of impenetrable. Like but it's weirdly impenetrable because I don't understand anybody's emotional state at any time. That just, I'll be really intent on, okay, I made my way through that trade. I figured I think I know what they were doing there, even though they didn't slow down to explain it to me. And then one of the people who like won that trade will like go into the bathroom and like start having a panic attack or crying or something, or I don't know, or dejectedly masturbating in the bathroom at work or something. Just like that's a big emotional reaction that I guess I didn't understand the trade well enough to understand what nuance of it set them off in what way. And so it sounds like I hate the show now that I'm saying that. It's terrible.
It sounds grueling, man.
It's got energy to it. And like I said, the cast is great. It's got, honestly, I may have given up on it for the theme music and the soundtrack is awesome. It's sort of like if John Carpenter was doing like a comedy soundtrack.
Okay.
Wonderful synth music.
Well, that sounds fun.
Fools me into thinking there's more going on here maybe every episode than there is.
Is this a recommend, or is this sort of like, well, I'm in it already, so I guess
I think you watch like one or two episodes and you'll know if you like it or not. Mm-hmm. If you're very into Succession, I think it's a good sort of, what do you call it? What's the
methadone? I don't know.
Methadone. That's what it was. I was going to say morphine. I knew that wasn't right. Sorry, there's a lot of drug use in this show. I'm really doing it dirty by not keeping that straight. I think they're more into ketamine and cocaine, though.
Oh, well, okay. I mean, I know nothing of this show. The experience of watching it, though, what you just described, kind of sounds to me a little Westworld, a little bit like that.
Yes.
Which I skipped out.
I think I understand what happened in the last scene.
Yeah.
But I don't understand how does that connect back to what happened 2 scenes ago?
Now, I like a complicated show. I like a smart show that treats me like an adult. I think we've talked many times about how great how formative and important all that great peak HBO TV, Sopranos, Deadwood, The Wire, that whole thing was to us. Those are difficult shows, they demand your attention. The newer phase of this, Westworld being the flag bearer, I would say.
Right.
I've just kind of had to be like, this is a lot of work for a little reward. The return on this. Like I did not watch the 3rd season of Westworld. The 4th one ran this year, and I was happily checked out of it. Not watching Westworld.
Yeah, me too. Although I just heard somebody talking the other day about how, Westworld got so bad and I hated it, and now it got really great again in the 4th season, and I feel like it was worth sticking it out. I'm like, oh, God damn you. I will not fall for this.
It was so appealing. I was so invested in that 1st season of Westworld and being like, I'm going to parse this. I'm going to figure out the mysteries of this show. And then the 2nd season came around, and I was just like, I'm a fool for trying. This is not respectful of my time.
It seems like the creators of that show felt like they would be failing if you were able to parse it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like they were mad that people got ahead of their twist in the first season, so they just had to bury it in more layers of obfuscation than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And like the thing about the earlier, first wave of peak TV and the difficult men genre and all of that, or just those shows being difficult. Maybe Deadwood aside, Deadwood is a little difficult just on a surface level to parse what's going on until you sort of learn its language.
Yeah.
But it put me in the mind of an axiom I've heard about like video game design, and like what constitutes a good type of challenge in a game versus a bad type of challenge in a game. And it is that a good challenge in a game is forcing you to solve a difficult problem with like simple, easy controls. And a bad type of challenge is when it's hard to solve a simple problem because you have difficult controls. And Westworld feels like the bad type of challenge there, where it's just so difficult to get your bearings of what is happening on the most basic level that it becomes harder to engage with the deeper layers of allegorical blah blah blah, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's one of the more like intentionally challenging shows I've ever seen. Like it feels like there is you have to take it this amount seriously if you're going to be rewarded with the thematic point of all of this. Like you have to deeply engage, rewatch scenes if needs be, and pay very close attention to subtle cues that will let you know what timeline we're in, that sort of thing. And I find all that to be self-important for its own sake for the most part, to get to the theme of like, well, we really, really, what is human when you get right down to it? Like, I mean, that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
I'm dismissive. I gave up because it was too smart for me in some ways, but at the same time,
but there's the suspicion that when you eventually make your way through that entire maze, as they, used in the first season, but at the heart of that maze, there's a suspicion that's just going to be like, well, you've seen Blade Runner, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that thing, right? Okay.
Yes, exactly right. And this is a show neither of us watched this summer. So
sure, we should talk about something. Yeah. What else have you been watching?
Well, we're sticking on HBO Max. The rehearsal.
Oh yeah, incredible. We just finished that up.
Yeah. Delightful. Weird.
I mean, it peaked early. I think the first 2 episodes are just phenomenal, and it's such a weird thing. Like, that's a comedy, right? Like,
I guess.
Do you laugh at that show?
Sometimes I laugh a lot.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
I laugh 1 to 2 times per 30 or 40-minute episode. But when I do, I almost cease to exist. Like I can't think of any. I don't know that I've ever had to pause for longer to just go through convulsions as in that first episode when there's the line about it's days like these I curse the Chinese. I couldn't explain the context of this if I had 20 minutes anyway, but it's just fucking incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It made the whole thing worth it. Like and again, the last couple episodes I feel like were not as interesting to me. I don't know.
Well,
I guess
it's so different week to week. It's like, what are we going to even talk about this week? Religion. I didn't expect that. Like it's just a frequently surprising, engaging, and just unique show. I mean, overall, there's just nothing else like The Rehearsal on TV. I have no idea how to classify it. I don't know if the whole thing was fictional. It might have been some version of fictional, probably more than they're implying, but less than than straight. Like I imagine those are real people. It's just a confounding object and fascinatingly so. And he's Nathan Fielder is just a great enigmatic center of this thing, whatever the hell it is. And
he is such a unique figure, that they're like, it's rare that these people come along like Andy Kaufman or somebody. Like there's really not even really any imitators.
No,
how would get anywhere near what they're doing. Yeah. And it's such a weird specific thing. And it's clearly like sort of galaxy brained that he's got these big elaborate plans. And I mean, that's where a lot of the humor comes from, is just the OCD, like the amount of crazy attention to detail and time and effort and money that they have to put into these very silly concepts.
Yeah, yeah, and it has that sort of thing where it does feel like there's a big plan, but that they're kind of willing to go where the hot action is. You know, like if something opens itself and presents itself to them, it seems like they have no problem just, okay, I guess we'll make a whole episode on this. Or maybe I'm just perceiving that to be the case. Maybe they knew that, maybe the whole thing with the little kid who kind of, who doesn't have a father but falls for him and thinks of him as his father. Maybe that was all scripted. I don't know. And I'm kind of just intrigued by it and tossing it around in my head, and it's working if I'm taking it on face value. It's working if I'm not. I feel like I'm doing an absolutely impossible job of explaining this show, but who could?
Are we even trying to explain it?
Not really, I guess, right? I mean, just trying to explain why it's good is tough.
Yeah. It often, I see in reviews often referencing Charlie Kaufman's Synecdoche, New York,
yes,
which is clearly like one of its closest spiritual cousins. Again, one of those things that there's not a lot. It's a pretty sparse shelf that Synecdoche, New York is on in the video store, but this is like that movie, if that movie were actually kind of like funny and watchable.
Yeah, it's not torturing and unpleasant. Yes,
right. But it's also got a little bit of Borat in it, in that there is sort of a narrative that they're imposing on what is clearly like real people improv, like real weirdos interacting with a sort of constructed persona that is the creator, clearly like doing some sort of character, but also like doing it in the wild.
Yes.
And gathering up what they can from that. Like, I don't know that I don't think he scripted the kid thing exactly, but clearly once it was going on, he then scripted a whole bunch of stuff off the back of it and built a whole finale around it.
And that level of sort of a spontaneous creation on top of what is already a really elaborate level of planning and specification already with the larger goals of the show is kind of what's so impressive about it. Like that it can be, the Heath Ledger Joker, it can be incredibly detail oriented and have many plans at the ready, but also be able to move when something presents itself. It's a hell of a show. And I don't know what the hell it is either. It's I'm very curious to see what the next season looks like. I mean, I'm sure it'll be similarly kind of confounding. But I would recommend this to people. Just that first episode,
the first two. I think that the second one features this just all-time weirdo.
Yes,
just an absolute lunatic that they found in the wild, and I think there was some suspicion on Twitter of like, is this all a put on? Like, nobody's this weird, and I'm like, no, I think it's definitely real because nobody's this weird. Like, if you were scripting this, you would have like removed two distinct layers of insanity from this persona, because you'd be like, well, that's just hats on hats on hats. Like, we have more than enough crazy already in this episode.
This is the sort of Christian numerologist fuckboy. Yeah.
Pothead. Yeah. Just
wow. Yeah. Wonderful stuff. Apparently he's on Cameo now.
Yeah, I guess quite a few people are from the show. Anyway, we did a terrible job explaining it. It's a very unique thing, but it's worth checking out. Yeah, do the first episode. I think you'll get at least two big belly laughs out of it, I would say.
Oh, at least. There's some very, very amazing details in that. And it's just a fascinating idea. It's another thing nobody else could do. So that's what's cool about that. I don't know, anything else?
Should Nathan Fielder have been the Riddler in the last Batman movie?
Oh, I would love that. That's the sort of off great. That would have been so much more interesting to me.
There is, in the finale, you sort of see like it's both more real and makes him a little more human for at the beginning of it, and then as it progresses, you see like a sinister angle to the sort of obtuse. I don't think he's doing like autism exactly, but somebody who's like, has really trouble relating to people is the stick that the Nathan Fielder character is working with. And man, you see the sinister side of the puppet master thing peeking out in that final episode, especially, which could be a Batman villain.
I love that about his entire vibe is that it is vaguely threatening, and yeah, I feel like I mean it sucks that this is such an easy thing to go to be like, well, how could this be employed in a superhero setting?
But what's the thing? It's just it's hard to imagine. Like, what do you want him to do next? Like between Nathan For You and this, it's like there's not really a whole genre there to keep exploring. It's like,
well, they're both such original creations in and of themselves, though, that I presume whatever the next thing is, which I mean, in this case, even season 2 of The Rehearsal is going to be a completely weird, its own thing deal. Right. It will probably only nominally resemble this first season, even if they're doing the same premise.
Yeah, I mean, with Nathan For You, I guess you could say it's sort of a prank show almost.
Kind of.
This is like touching that a little bit, at least at the start, and then it's really in its own genre by the end. Maybe just in Synecdoche, New York. But again, it's because it's a reality show where, reality in quotes, but it's not scripted. I guess the whole point is that they're scripting everything. But
right.
God, it's just only getting harder to explain as I try and explain it.
Yeah, I don't know why anyway. This is so much more accessible than Westworld, too. I don't know.
No shit. Well, Westworld's trying to sell you like Batman shit, and then giving you this Synecdoche, New York bullshit.
All right. Let's talk about something simple, man. Let's talk about some of those easy comedies from the summer. There's some
all right.
Ones, yeah.
I'm still I'm keeping up with What We Do in the Shadows.
It's good.
I can't believe that has now been on for 4 years.
Yeah.
And it's still great.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just, the old saw about how like, oh, that Meryl Streep is such a great actress. I would listen to her read the phone book and it would be compelling or whatever. You literally could just have Matt Berry read the dictionary and just pronounce words in an off-kilter way, and it would make me laugh like pretty consistently.
He's an incredible talent. God, that guy's funny. What a blast. What a great guy to have on a show regularly. That, yes, obviously, this guy, a comic genius, really. I mean, no other way to, anything else would be selling him short.
Well, it seems so simple too, that he's doing. I mean, he's generating like laughs outside of the punchlines just by, you make him say the word passion and he's going to say passion.
He had a line reading on New York City in just the last day. New York City. It's some of the best shit ever. And I mean, the whole show is good. It's all really talented people being very funny. He's got to be the standout, but everyone else is really strong too, of the main cast. This new
Mark
season,
Prosh and Natasha Dimitriou are wonderful. Incredible as well.
Mark
Prosh is sort of on the backbench this season with what they're doing with that character.
I would say that is a not worth the juice, not worth the squeeze. I guess the juice of that.
Not so far. I would agree.
Yeah, I would say it would have been better just to have him doing his regular thing, which has worked so well. Glad he's still around. I think the whole thing was a little misguided to make him a child for this season, but he is funny, and I'm glad he is still on the show. That is the only thing I think that is keeping this particular season from the heights of the first couple years of What We Do in the Shadows on TV.
There is something, I think there's a decent comedic premise there of, Mark Prosh being the energy vampire, that now they've made him into a child, and doing the energy vampire version of a child is kind of, it's funny the way that they want to describe the YouTube video they're watching to you while they're watching it, or they're walking through like their Lego collection or whatever, and how there's no escaping that when a child wants to when a young child wants to talk to you about something that they are passionate about, but you could just absolutely not give a shit about. But I don't know if that's a full season's worth. Like, that might have been fun for 2 episodes, and now I just kind of miss having full grown Colin Robinson around the margins.
I think he would have he added, even episodes that he was not the focus to, added usually at least 3 or 4 good laughs, and And that, I mean, honestly, we're just missing those simply because he's a visual effect to render now anytime you see him.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just less of him inherently. Everyone else, always great, still great. It's a very funny show. There was a couple excellent ones this year. The one with the private school admissions. That
That one
was
is fantastic. I mean,
yeah.
absolutely absurd.
one of the finest hours of the show. It has kind of reached a point, I think, like we're like middle stage of The Office at this point. They have a premise that works, they have a cast that works, and it's just going to work. I don't necessarily feel the wild invention, that I initially did with this show, but it's pretty entertaining still. Pretty good comfort food.
Yeah. I don't know if I ever thought it was wildly inventive. I mean, the mockumentary thing had been done to death by the time the TV version of this had come out. It's based on a movie that was also in mockumentary style.
Yes.
The movie's great too.
It is.
One of the other things I would like about the show is they deploy guest stars so well.
They do.
Like the wedding episode, is always good for, you get some celebrity cameos in there, and everything with the Baron is great.
Yeah,
I like the Jersey Devil episode.
That was fun. Yeah.
Just again, that Matt Berry line reading, just Nandor, I have been tricked by the devil.
I would like them to bring back Mark Hamill. He's my favorite guest star on the show yet. In fact, that is my favorite episode of the show. Jackie Daytona. That's sort of the ring they're chasing.
I think that is one of those episodes that's so clearly able to just grab it and point it. That's the best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a pure Matt Berry showcase too. Yeah,
exactly. So, but I'm glad that they haven't been chasing that and trying to do like
more Jackie.
Like Brooklyn Nine-Nine would do themed episodes of like, okay, we're doing the Halloween heist episode this year, and we're doing the Craig Robinson episode this year. Like we have to put a new spin on the same premise and so I'm glad they're not doing a Jackie Daytona episode every year, like trying to chase that.
That's true.
It is the best that the show ever was.
That's a good one. I don't know. Let's see. What else is the Harley Quinn show? Are you watching that? It's good.
Nope, I have not watched that.
You should. It's very funny. A very funny show.
And it did not get the axe.
Not officially, but everyone seems to kind of think it's probably doomed. They are finishing out their third season. It's about halfway through right now. But it's just because it is a DC half-hour cartoon for adults, people are pretty sure that's on the chopping block, which is unfortunate because it's a very funny show, and it's doing all the comedy things that you want a Batman show to do. That I would say never really have. They've never really quite pulled off before. This is the best comedy Batman I think I've ever seen.
More than Adam West, huh?
I mean, I
guess it's not even a fair comparison.
No.
Like comedy just functioned differently 60 years ago.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, those are pretty great. But I'm not watching those regularly now, to be fair.
Right.
And yeah, this is funny, and it's a half hour. It's digestible. There's some wonderful performances. You really can't go wrong with this. It's very easy to just pick up and watch it. I would check it out if you get a chance.
I'm just moving through the week here. Like what comes out on Wednesday? Wednesday is She-Hulk, which again I'm stuck with because of my roommate.
I think it's okay. It's okay.
It's fine. I mean, there's
cute. It's fine.
I've now been burned by these Disney Plus shows enough times. I'm like, okay. Usually this early on, it's better than it's cute. It's okay. It's like, hey, this is pretty good, and then things start to unravel. So like, if things haven't even begun to unravel, I'm a little concerned. And I just have I think it seems like a waste of Tatiana Maslany so far. That I want it to be a little more overtly a sitcom.
It's pretty
commit to the fourth wall breaking stuff a little more rather than just once every 15 minutes.
I do think if I had to say the thing this is getting right, is that it does feel like it's a TV show and not a kind of long, low budget movie with these characters, which is how a lot of these feel. This feels like it was structured to be episodic. It feels like it has the format of a David E. Kelly, girl boss lawyer show, Ally McBeal stuff, Boston legal stuff, sort of light comedy law show, and it just happens to have super beings and monster people in it, and that's funny. It has potential to be funny, and
I hope you're right about that, because I think it's too early to say that it actually is doing that thing. I think because the first episode, and you kind of feel it, that it was restructured. Apparently this origin story stuff was supposed to be later in the season, and they repackaged it to be the pilot. And so it definitely feels like, I mean, it's a thing with a lot of comedy pilots too, is that the pilot is usually the least funny episode of a comedy because it's got to do the most like actual table setting and plot maneuvering and
and I guess my life has led me to working in this news radio station. Or,
right.
Oh, look at these circumstances that now I'm working in the Just Shoot Me office. Yeah, exactly.
Right. And then once you're in the office and David Spade's making his little jokes and whatnot, that you can have some more fun there. And you just, get the cast to settled into place and bumping off each other. And that's when, comedies can kind of come into themselves.
For sure.
It's going to be hard to do that in an 8 episode or whatever streaming season that apparently has a heavy editorial hand pushing down from the top.
So that's She-Hulk. I don't really need to talk much about that. It's, I think like you, the Disney Plus shows, I'm kind of just like, not excited. They're fine or whatever, but
we're not going to keep doing an episode for each and every one of those shows because they're relentless.
Yeah. And samey and just not that interesting to talk about or watch anymore. There's an eating fast food quality to them. And
which is things people have said about Marvel, especially, and Star Wars for years. And I always thought was, a little dramatic or just overblown. Like, is it really that oppressive if like there's 2 movies in this sprawling mega franchise per year? And I didn't think so. And now I'm like, but if there's a new streaming series every other month, it feels like homework and not as entertaining. And I'm just getting tired of it.
Yeah, it needs to be much higher yield if they're going to be pulling this stuff off. And frankly, I don't think that's realistic under any circumstance. To do 4, 5, 6 great Marvel shows a year, it's just.
I don't think it was realistic to do what they actually did successfully in the movie space for 10, 12 years. Like that is still fairly unprecedented. We'll talk about we got some other episodes coming up about big sci-fi franchises that, have some bona fide classics under their belt, but a much spottier batting average overall. But
interesting. Okay.
We'll save that for later on. Let's keep talking about TV because I would like to talk to you about another show that I really do enjoy, which is Reservation Dogs on FX.
Yes, I have not seen it. I've always wanted to see it. It's been on my list, and it's been one of those things like, I don't have time. And but it's there. What is this, season 2? This
is season 2.
Yeah.
It was kind of surprising how quickly season 2 came out. In that it came out just under a year after the first season debuted.
Crazy.
Which used to be, par for the course. Just how TV was made. But now it's almost like a badge of honor. Like since The Sopranos gave way to Game of Thrones or whatever, and Better Call Saul would do it too. Like, well, if you're not taking 2.5 years between seasons, like, are you really producing art?
Yeah, I mean, I think pandemic played a role in all that too. Like that just exacerbated. Like, okay, it's going to be, you're going to wait 2.5 years for a new season of The Boys. Right. I don't know that it necessarily becomes artistic pretensions at that point. Hey, I didn't watch any of The Boys. Did you watch any of that this year?
Nope, never.
Yeah, I want to sometime. I will try. But I heard it was good.
I have an allotment, so much bandwidth I can give to like R-rated hyper-violent superhero stuff, and it got eaten up elsewhere with Batman and Peacemaker and so forth. Everybody says that's like the good version of it, so maybe I'll circle around to it eventually. But I want to keep talking about Reservation Dogs,
yes,
and
please.
about artistic pretensions, especially because you mentioned that, and it's definitely of the type of the ilk of half-hour comedy that kind of, there's a type of this that it's billed as a comedy and it's under an hour, but it kind of desperately wants to be a drama. And
Barry does this a little.
Yeah, Barry's kind of a crime show. I mean, it doesn't.
It's
Barry
a comedy show with aspirations to be a crime show.
Yeah, it wants to be a pulp drama as opposed to, I don't know, like Better Things or
okay,
even like Atlanta. Like that is a show that can be very funny, but also I can feel these days this sort of weight of its importance to the culture, like going into every episode in a way maybe it didn't right at the beginning, where each thing has to be its own art film And
Is that Reservation Dogs though?
Reservation Dogs. No, that's what I like about it though, is that there's a lot of like heavy stuff that go undergirding this show. It's about teenagers in a reservation in Oklahoma, and they're kind of, there's a lot of poverty and social problems that they have to deal with, and some genuine emotional stuff, but it is telling sort of, it's a serialized thing. It might veer off to an episode about one of their parents one week, but it's not doing the thing that every comedian fell in love with after like the Louis C.K. show. We're eschewing continuity entirely and just doing like, maybe we'll do a little bit of it, but also maybe we'll do this complete, alternate reality thing, like Atlanta does. We'll just not see its top billed star for 3 weeks in a row. And this does feel like it's never straying far from the story. Like it might take a branch to like visit with a side character, but it's all part of the same reality. And it's a little bit of a goofier reality sometimes. And then, there's also, they're dealing with their friend's suicide, which is very heavy stuff. So I don't know, it's a little lighter on its feet than some of the sitcoms with more art house pretensions, is what I was getting at there.
Okay. Well, I mean, I still kind of don't get a sense. I know what the show is, to be honest. Is it a heightened reality? Is it?
Yes.
Yeah. Is it goofy in that way? Is it kind of I don't know. Is it closer to a 30 Rock reality, or is it closer to
No.
something a little more grounded, but still not quite reality? I mean, it doesn't really matter if it's a good show, I suppose.
It's a good show. It's something a little more grounded, but I don't know. It's, I guess, sort of Atlanta with a little bit of Wilfred vibe to it. Do you remember the Wilfred show?
Wow.
With Elijah Wood talking to the mascot dog costume?
I never watched it. I certainly remember that it existed, though.
So there's a conceit in Reservation Dogs that the character is like, the main character mainly, although I think he's like showed up briefly to talk to other people, is visited by this like spirit warrior of this, the spirit of his tribe, and this warrior who's just kind of a goofy fuck up of a spirit guide, who like, gives him some advice, but also some bad advice, and just generally is a very unimpressive specimen of the proud native warrior.
It sounds like a Christopher Moore book, kind of, maybe.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Christopher Moore, by the way, doesn't he work with Neil Gaiman quite a bit?
No, there's similar style,
something?
but I get what you're heading there. Yeah. The Sandman. Yeah. Oh, the Sandman, the big streaming show of August. I loved this, man. I loved the Sandman.
I did not, man. I could not get engaged with it. I feel like I'm letting you down personally.
It's okay. The show was very well received, and it was very fun to watch with people online having reactions to it. People who had never seen it, people who had read all the books multiple times, like I have. I'm fascinated by this mythology, by this entire conceit. It is it's so different than most fantasy. It is modern. It is, but also so indebted to folklore. It has, it's so episodic, and it explores so many different, sort of different stories as ways of getting to the same basic kind of conceit about storytelling. I mean, we've talked before, remember in Inception, about how cinematically dreams are stories, and that sure. This is like the ultimate version of that, the ultimate extrapolation of a creator's kind of. It's why I want to talk about Terry Gilliam with you at some point. The just the amount of trying to dump one's subconscious onto a comic book page or a television screen, and just get at some sort of ideas about universal collective unconscious through those. That is what this show is attempting. It is so much. It is so weird. So many characters and things and ideas, and just bouncing off one another. It is, of course, going to be very different one episode to the next as a result. it's ambitions, the ambitions. It's from the comic. It's all there, but it's just trying to get this across to people in a movie medium, television medium. I really love the swing here, and I'm so impressed how close they got to capturing the tone of the book.
I think I almost wanted it to be more episodic and like the style to be more radically different from episode to episode, because it felt like that. It felt like there was basically like just it was 2 seasons, like mini.
It's 2 arcs
runs,
yeah.
2 arcs, yeah.
It's 2 comic book collections actually.
Right.
There's the Doll's House story and the first 6 episodes, which is the Preludes and Nocturnes story in the comics.
Okay,
and they have their own plots, yes, that are not specifically related.
So I think that the TV show probably did a pretty good job of capturing that, because I bought the Preludes and Nocturnes collection, I don't know, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And read 1 issue of it and never finished it. I think it's the same reason why I couldn't quite engage with this. Here is Morpheus the Dream Lord is just not very engaging as a lead character on a TV show, or in a comic book for that matter. And if it's more of a framing device, is he like the crypt keeper in this anthology show? But as a main character who's like has a quest where he's trying to collect things, and it's just a little too far out there. And I feel like the magic of this is really far out there, and there's not enough of a real world established to anchor it to anything in my mind, where I care about what happens to anybody at any point.
I mean, I get that. The characters are, especially the mortal characters, who will sometimes be the center of the story, sometimes not, are kind of by design disposable. Right. We move on from them at a pretty quick clip because we're traveling, different centuries, different eons, different realms of existence sometimes. So these characters that might be very important one episode could just not exist in the next one, or whatever. And that is the episodic stuff from the comics coming in. There are about like 4 major Morpheus arcs in the story, in the comics at least, that sort of anchor it. And then the rest of it, probably something like 60% is either longer stories with a mortal protagonist. You saw one of those in Doll's House, the Rose Walker plot line. Which is one of the most tough ones to parse. Honestly, that's a tricky one, and I think they did a really good job of wrangling into some kind of shape that made sense. And then you've got all these one-offs, right?
I was struggling mightily to give a shit about what a vortex was or what it might possibly mean.
It's just an apocalyptic dream thing, Like they simplified it. Is kind of what they did.
Yeah. But and then I was very confused by that arc too. Of like, it seemed like there was something sinister about how maybe she was like unintentionally brainwashing all these people around her to be like her fan club. And
yeah, kind of.
There's this, but then by the end of it, I'm like, oh no, they're actually all just like this weird mismatched family that all love each other, and that's great. And I'm like,
they lean into that a little.
Did I miss something here, like fundamental? I don't.
The idea being that her ability, her vortexness, kind of draws everyone's kind of collective unconscious together in a dream world. When they're unconscious, they are they're communicating mind to mind, one to the next, in a more direct way than should be possible. It's all this weird magic shit. It's like right. That works different than the way the ruby that David Thewlis has, or like there's so many different vestments of dream that behave in different ways, or rules about the dreaming, or individual plot lines that are important for one story, and then you don't actually have to know about anymore. As I'm describing this, I'm understanding how off-putting and difficult this all is, and it's much like the Westworld thing, where it's just like, wait, why am I gonna fucking engage with all this? I get that, but
I will say the highlights for me. I really liked the episode that was focused on like his immortal friend.
Great episode. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
great
That was
episode.
my
I
favorite
like,
episode,
yeah,
the death one.
and Kirby Hal Baptiste was great as Death. I thought,
Mhm.
um, it's not like you can build a lot of really exciting arcs around that portrayal of Death, but it was interesting for a little stretch there. I think that's the way it seems to me.
She's an interesting spice that comes up throughout. There's some incredible uses of that character going forward.
Well, so what I was struck by though, like even the big like David Thewlis episode, that is this, horrifying transgressive stuff, sort of. But I also like didn't feel like this mattered in any way. And it reminded me a lot of watching the Preacher show, which Preacher is another very similar experience I had. That I bought a paperback of that and got read one issue into it and couldn't really get into it. And then the TV show came out and I thought, okay, here's my chance to see what everybody was talking about. And I watched a couple seasons of that, but never really enjoyed it that much. And it's the same thing of like, I feel like this takes place in a very heightened world and you're throwing us right into that. And people are like getting, gooily, messily exploded left and right, like from the opening minutes of the opening episode.
Yes.
And so that you lose the ability to shock me with that type of, gooey head exploding violence 7 or 8 episodes later. And on top of that, it's a very heightened world and reality. And you're also like, my entryway into this world is like the least human, most like super powered, crazy, like person in that world.
Yes. Well,
so maybe it's me being basic, but I need more of a tenor, I think.
They've endeavored, I would say, to give you hooks, narrative characters that you can like latch onto. Patton Oswalt as the friendly Raven, or the Rose Walker character, or the.
I'm sorry. You mean Patton Oswalt, the reincarnated human as a dream raven?
Yes, that's that guy.
Familiar to the Lord of Dreams. That's my. That's
good.
My relatable in.
that's fun, right?
I mean, it's not bad casting, but it's like, the opening of Sandman, like in the first episode, the first scene that like Charles Dance appears in, he's like a human being, right? But he's also a warlock who is trapping the physical embodiment of death in his basement.
Yes,
and that's in his first scene. Like the quote unquote real people are so far from reality that it's not working. I don't feel any sense of consequence. Like if Morpheus does not get his bag and his mask back and set the dreaming to rights, like, I don't have a sense of what that means for the quote unquote real world. And I don't think that's a real world anyway. There's a serial killer conventions. There's a sleeping plague that apparently had millions of people.
That was real, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was caused by Morpheus the Dream Lord getting locked in a glass bubble under a wealthy warlock's estate. But yeah, I think some people didn't wake up or something in the 1917s or whatever.
Well, you can say it's not because of that, but I'm going to wait to hear what Joe Rogan thinks.
Yeah. You didn't like the serial killer convention?
I mean, I thought it was kind of fun. Yeah. Like just as a conceit of, I mean,
yeah, it's a bunch of heightened shit. I mean,
it definitely felt like Vertigo Comics shit,
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Like it would have been at home on Preacher. That's the bridging point between those two.
Preacher. That is a damning comparison, I must say.
I'm sorry.
I mean, here's the thing with Preacher. The comics came to me at a similar time as Sandman, and I was similarly crazy about both of them. Sandman I have revisited and been like, yes, still good. Preacher I've been like, oh, I was a teenager. Oh, right. Okay. I understand why this seems so cool. It's not anymore. And because it is one of the most unabashed kind of just like teenage boy power fantasies that you can imagine. Just like, oh, well, he has the word of God. Anything he says, you got to do. It's just that's that's superpowers kind of eliminating any sort of pretense about what they're about, and just explicitly just like you have power over people like that. You just can do what you want to people.
And in the context of the show, like, I mean, maybe it's not supposed to be like a superhero thing exactly, but it just, the power is so overwhelming that it's really hard to concoct a villain like challenge
Mm-hmm.
to him. He's got his powers, and they can like all of the characters on that could kind of just destroy human beings with their bare hands at will as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, when Morpheus the Dream Lord defeats Satan himself in like episode 3, it's kind of hard. Like, well, but now like the problem is a serial killer convention. Like you can't deal with that, really. Like,
Well, he's not even the protagonist in that
right.
storyline, though. He's kind of another antagonist in it. He's working against the actual lead, Rose Walker, and
Mhm.
and they do that stuff a lot. What did you think of those last couple episodes? Did you get to those the Dream of a Thousand Cats?
I watched the cat one. I didn't watch the other one.
Okay.
The cat one, that was what more of like, okay, this is kind of it's more of the anthology thing. It is
Yes.
an alternate format. You know, Morpheus is very tangentially involved. I'm like, this, I was more into that. I mean, I'm not blown away. I'm not like dying to see the next chapter in the Dream of Cats.
The cat story is done. It's a one-off. It's,
Right.
it is one touch of,
clear.
and a lot of stuff like that should be, I mean, hopefully if they're really adapting Sandman, then we'll see more of those, because that makes up the 50% of the comics. There's wonderful stories about Arabian Nights, 1001 Arabian Nights stories, or
Sure.
or Eastern European Baba Yaga folklore about werewolves and shit like that. Like that stuff just keeps coming up in these little one-offs, and they're all very, very interesting and very, very original. And I really hope that's the stuff we see as they continue to adapt.
What this reminds me of, though, one-off, werewolf animation, all this stuff. I've also been watching some of Love, Death, and Robots on Netflix.
Oh,
at the recommendation of our old buddy Bucho.
Yeah.
I've probably seen 15 of those at this point, just still like less than half, but
Mm-hmm.
I dig in those.
They're cool. Yeah.
They strike me as like, I never read like Heavy Metal magazine, but I did rent the VHS of the Heavy Metal movie from Blockbuster.
Of course.
As you could see some cartoon boobies in it.
Mm-hmm.
And this Love, Death, and Robots strikes me as sort of like, oh, this seems like what Heavy Metal would have been, or that it's very, very violent, very sexual one-off cartoons.
I think it's literally what they did instead of Heavy Metal. Like, I think Fincher was trying to do Heavy Metal and ended up turning into Love, Death, and Robots.
That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. Should I go? Should I go for those? Should I keep watching some of those?
I think so. There's
I've seen as many good as I've seen.
Watch one with me. I'd say I don't think any of them have been awful. I mean, even the awful ones are over in 10 or 12 minutes usually. So.
Right. Yeah.
But there's some good ones, and just
the
impressive animation.
The spider asteroid thing. That one was powerful.
I don't even know if I've seen that one.
Oh, okay.
Is that the one that Beyond the Rift where they're he like sees yeah
yeah
some sort of Tales from the Crypt vibes there too.
Oh yeah, big time.
Big time. These.
Yeah, there's I guess that is a thing about that show, is there's always the chance you're going to watch something completely horrifying, and that is fun when you go to an anthology like that. That's what I liked about Black Mirror. You never knew when you would just be destroyed by an episode of that.
There's one oh yeah, well, Black Mirror, I now know, like, okay, this is going to be rough at best. That one, yeah, there's one that seems like it's going to be a pretty grounded, like, I don't know, 19th century seafaring thing, and becomes like the most horrifying monster, like sci-fi monster thing I've ever seen.
I'm going to look that one up today. I'm going to look it up today.
I believe it's the first episode of the 3rd season, because I auto-played it first and then realized, wait, why did it start me in the 3rd season? Circled back.
I'll check it out. That's what's nice about that. You can kind of just jump around through it.
Oh yeah, you don't need to go in order by any means. But
looking for
something else that you do need to go in order on. The thing, my big thing that I'm all about right now, House of the Dragon Bay, Hot D.
Yeah, it's very good. Yeah.
That's George Martin calls it that.
Oh wow. Hot D. Okay. That's great. Hey, pretty good, man. Off to a good start, gotta say. I'm enjoying.
I am I'm very happy with it so far. it is like, I've read the source material here and you have not, so I'm not going to try and give away anything, but we are definitely in the prologue still. And
Sure.
that it's sort of in keeping with, I was a little surprised, like, really, you're starting this far back? Because like, it's kind of obvious in the source material which chunk of this is what you're going to make a show out of.
Okay.
And we are still like in front of that by quite a ways, but I compare it to the original series, and like, yeah, there's quite a bit of table setting in that first season. Like, there's nothing approaching a full scale battle in the first season until, like, I don't know, episode 9, maybe. And even then it's off screen.
Right. I mean, I'm sure they want this to run, I don't know, probably 4 years or so, something like that.
Sure.
Give it a full articulation. And yeah, I think they are probably smart enough to know that, you start small and build up. We have to get to the point where we did with Game of Thrones, or it's not going to work the same.
I don't know, because I think we come off of the end of Game of Thrones, and people expect that sort of scale and level of polish, at least in terms of effects and production value, if not scripting.
Well, we have we have it in terms of production value, I would say.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is also the thing, because of the premise of this series, you can't keep the dragons off screen for any portion of this. Like,
not really.
They're all front and center throughout this. But yeah, I'm very pleased with the performances so far, and just the production, the scale, everything's there. I don't mind at all that they're reusing the theme song.
Little shameless, yeah.
Yeah, but it's good.
Yeah,
I do think they should have kept the like animated map tour of the episode's location. I think that would be very useful to people, especially.
Well, it seems like we're going to be localized in the at King's Landing and on the Shipbreaker Bay there over to Dragonstone, where the Targaryens are. Oh, but I don't know.
The Stepstones,
You're right. I don't even remember where the Stepstones are. Is that Baratheon lands? Is that the Stormlands?
No, they're off the coast of Dorne.
Oh,
they're
okay.
Between,
that's a bit of ways.
Essos.
All right.
So, I mean, yeah, it's. I mean, look, we're still in the very uneventful portion of this series, although it doesn't feel like these have been especially uneventful episodes.
No, it's been like getting back into a warm bath, man. This is the stuff that we enjoyed about this show, is the lengthy conversations about primogeniture. Like that's the good. I'm shocked at how much I've been missing my lengthy primogeniture conversations on this show. It's fun.
Big elaborate models.
They're great. Yeah.
I don't know why I just love that. Just give it God. Something about Westeros is just like, yeah, give me like a bunch of middle-aged British men in beards standing over maps, and I'm just like a pig in shit.
I'm not as taken out of it by the wigs as I thought I would be.
That's the big knock on it.
They're okay, I'm like, okay, they all look like that. It's fine, whatever.
I mean, that's the problem. It's everybody, and poor Steve Toussaint. Lord Corlys looks like they just spray painted one of Forrest Whitaker's wigs from Battlefield Earth.
Who's coming off best right now? Who are your early hits here? Who do you?
Well, I mean, I think the clear like consensus winner is Matt Smith as Prince Daemon. Is that sort of star of the opening.
He's good. He's. I almost feel like this is a misdirect, and obviously I don't know what's going on with these characters, but I feel like this guy is presenting so strongly as one thing that he can't just be that thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't want to give away anything.
Right? Yeah, this is gonna be the problem talking about.
I think already in the second episode he's not exactly a pure villain.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least not yet. I mean, because he's causing problems for his brother, but he doesn't want to actually overthrow his brother.
Mm-hmm.
He's not yet, at least, going at anybody directly. I mean,
it's episode 2.
He's kicking.
He's coming close.
Yeah, he's coming pretty close. You're right.
He's stealing eggs.
He's not Ramsay Bolton, though.
No, not yet.
He did sever somebody's penis in like his introduction scene, basically. So
yeah, with a close up of severed penis. Yes, we're back in Westeros. Very fun.
Exactly. But no, I agree with you. Reese Evans is my standout so far. I could not.
So good.
I had to triple check that was him. Like, really, that guy, like from The Replacements?
Yeah, he's very good, and he has a real interesting energy. Like he seems like I mean, I get the sense look, I don't trust anybody on this show. I feel
Of
like
course.
nobody is going to be good on this show, and that's kind of exciting. Like, they're definitely positioning Rhaenyra as our protagonist.
Yes.
No way. Like, I don't believe that at all. I mean, she may be the protagonist, but she's not going to be the hero. And again, I feel like this is going to be tough to talk about because I'm kind of joyously ignorant of what happens here.
Right.
I mean, I know a couple details, just what I remember them talking about on the original show, but I never actually read the source material. So,
Well, there is a big, you got to be careful with the original. There is a part in the original series where it's actually a scene where Joffrey is taking Marjorie through the crypts.
yes,
And he's pointing out things, and he says exactly what happens to one of the main characters on this show.
You see, I remember that. I just don't remember who it was.
Well, I'm not going to say. But I'm just going to say, look out for that one. If you see them walking through the crypt, you can skip over that scene if you want to stay unspoiled.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing. Like, with the original Game of Thrones, I was completely spoiled. I knew all of the stuff. I'd read all the books, and I was kind of eagerly devouring, the sort of additional material. This would be a very different experience if I remain unspoiled for the events of the show, and it will be, I think, hard to pull off given my level of interest in it.
Well, the fun thing about this for me is that you can't spoil it in the same way because the source material is so different as presentation than the original books. So the Game of Thrones books are this shifting first person perspective where you are following like Tyrion or Arya in any given chapter and seeing what they see and getting their interior monologue and all that. You don't get any of that in the Fire and Blood book that they're pulling this from. That book is written as a history. It's somebody 100 years later saying, this is what happened. We know this happened. The people on this side say like this person did it for this horrible, selfish reason. And then their other side said that they did it for love or whatever. And so even, you can read that whole thing and get a rundown of like when and where the big battles will take place and who will die how. But you really don't know who is a hero and villain even.
Fascinating.
There's a major character that has not been introduced that is sort of like I was going to say Tyrion, but you don't really know if he's Tyrion. He's more like a Varys from the original show, sort of
you need that guy,
spy master, secretive type of guy who's got his hands in a lot of plots. And you really don't get a sense, is that person the Littlefinger, the biggest villain of the show? Or is he the Tyrion who like maybe got a bum rap in the history books, but wasn't doing it for self-interested ends necessarily?
And has that actor been cast?
I
don't even know.
I don't think so. One of his relatives is on the Small Council currently.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, some of these characters feel extraordinarily doomed. Rhys Ifans feels doomed more so than anybody except maybe the king himself, who, just like how many episodes are they going to let that guy hang on?
Well, there's the thing too of, Lord Corlys, the guy, he of the unfortunate wig, he is from the second most powerful house after the Targaryens, who are this house that we have never heard of before.
Yes.
And that does not bode well for, we know the Lannisters and the Starks will make it out of here. It's intact.
The Larons, or was that what they are?
The Valerians.
Yeah, they're.
Yeah. When you look around the rest of that table and you're like, Lord Hightower, Lord Strong, Lord Beesbury, like, well, I don't know.
That's fun. I mean, does this have the chance? I mean, I guess, like we're doing a whole TV summer roundup here. We're not really talking about the best show of the summer, I think. Better Call Saul, because we already did that in a whole episode.
We did that, yeah.
This is attempting to pull off what Better Call Saul did in its way.
Yes.
This is a version of Game of Thrones that is, different characters kind of, but some of the destination is known, and it is sort of a prequel series in its way, very much a prequel series. Can it pull that off? Can it do what Better Call Saul managed? Can it get to those heights? Is it even possible? I mean, is there a ceiling on how good this can be? Is it is it limited by its fealty to the original show in some way?
I think it remains to be seen just the level of fealty. The big concern there is that the Targaryen prophecy element they introduced.
I don't know.
Like how close. I mean, I'm encouraged that they didn't really mention it at all in the second episode.
Uh-huh.
That I don't want things tied too directly to the plot of the first show, because there's whatever you do here, there's going to be a 150-year gap before anything happens with that.
Yeah, if
And
that's the secret objective of these major
yeah.
characters, and we know how it plays out, sort of
I do think though
mediocrely halfway through the final season.
There's something useful about that though, that about that prophecy, in that in the book, you know, I guess I'll give you the broad spoiler that there is a civil war brewing here.
No way.
And yeah. And the Targaryens are going to fight each other some, and it does become a thing. This is a strength of Game of Thrones, where it's not like there's really a good guy side and a bad guy side. That there are clearly some bad people on both sides. There are people who have very legit beefs on both ends. And your sort of sympathy can vary from person to person, or scenario to scenario. And that is an interesting thing to do, but it's also kind of dangerous. And there is definitely a benefit to having the Starks as the good guys,
right,
in the original. And especially if Rhaenyra is going to be our protagonist for the first season, at least, or, I don't know if it will expand in the same way that the Game of Thrones sort of let more people into its narrative sympathies as it went along. But there's certainly a way of, like I said, because of the way the book is written, you could interpret it all as she was just wanted the throne for her own purposes and her own ambitions, and it was all very grubby, self-interested stuff on both ends of the Civil War. You could interpret it that way because the book doesn't have direct point of views of the characters.
right.
And there's a risk there that you run into everybody's shitty, so and I know what happens 200 years later anyway, so like, what do I really care what happens from day to day in this conflict? And I think having a protagonist with a little more sympathy there, that she thinks, at least is telling herself, the way Daenerys did, that she's pursuing some higher altruistic purpose, that it's not just about her getting the best clothes and the best chair, but that she truly is serving the realm by pursuing her own power. I think that helps maybe give us a little more of a rooting interest, at least for a time.
Yeah. All right. Well, that all sounds encouraging. I'm certainly on board. Probably with however long the show wants to go. It's unless it takes a massive nosedive, it's a good show already, clearly, and it's entertaining. And I mean, I guess a nosedive is possible, but I'm certainly on board, and I'm excited to see where it lands. I'm excited to kind of head to head this with the Lord of the Rings show coming up. Like this week, I think. That's crazy that these two are happening right on top of each other. Like it's a real mano a mano here. I think Lord of the Rings has its work cut out for it. Yeah, I think so. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. We might have to do an episode about Lord of the Rings specifically.
Or I think
maybe head-to-head episode.
I mean, if it's good enough, if it's another Wheel of Time, maybe not.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
the reason why I'm hopeful about House of the Dragon not having that nosedive is that the source material is there, and it gets better from here. And it hasn't. Mm-hmm. It's not as extensive in terms of as the original series, but it is more focused for sure. Yeah. Yes, and there's an ending of this storyline that is in place, and they can work to that a number of different ways. I think it's exciting that I know everything about the source material, but I still have a lot of question marks. Lord of the Rings, wide open there. I have no idea what they're doing. I haven't even watched the trailers. I know that it's very disconnected from the books.
The scale is impressive. It is of a size. They definitely spent on it. I mean, it's gonna have to see what it is. Very curious. Very curious. I think Game of Thrones probably has the upper hand going in. We will see how it plays out, though. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And both of these things I think are potentially instructive for the people over at Disney and dealing with Star Wars. And that if you compare it to Better Call Saul as this prequel ideal, but I think Better Call Saul was more closely tied to its original material than this is, or than House of the Dragon needs to be. But both Lord of the Rings and House of the Dragon seem to be disconnecting themselves in by great swaths of time from the storylines and characters that we are most familiar with. And, that's something that we've bemoaned that Star Wars has been unwilling to do, even though it's got the most grand, expansive canvas that could possibly exist.
Indeed. All right, well, plenty of fantasy coming up then.
Yep.
For us to watch and discuss. All right, thank you, Al.
I'll see you, Middle Earth, man.
See you.